It is wonderful to have you back with us. We hope you enjoyed the break. We'll promise there'll be another one, so you'll get to enjoy that as well. For those of you who weren't able to join us yesterday afternoon, we had the privilege of awarding the 10th Biennial Thomas J. Dodd Prize in International Justice and Human Rights. This prize was first awarded in 2002. It's awarded to an individual or organization who exemplify extraordinary work and perseverance to bring international justice and human rights to different situations. This year, we were privileged to be able to make that award to the Babyn Yar Holocaust Memorial Center in Kiev, Ukraine. The Babyn Yar Holocaust Memorial Center, as you'll hear in a moment, started in 2016 to bring memory to the power of the place of Babyn Yar, what had happened there with the execution of 33,771 Jews on September 29th and 30th, 1941. Their work has been interrupted by the war in Ukraine, the physical planning for the work, but not the spirit of the work itself. So we wanted to start this morning, after the keynote, with a panel that helps us think about Babyn Yar specifically, and more generally, issues of memory related to past human rights abuses. So since most of you were unable to join us yesterday for the Dodd Prize, we did want to start with a brief 4-minute video produced by the Babyn Yar Holocaust Memorial Center to give you an idea of their work, and then I'll introduce the panel after that point. Thank you, Alex.
On September 29th and 30th, 1941, the Nazis executed 33,771 people in Babyn Yar. In further years of the occupation of Kiev, between 1941 and 1943, they took the lives of 70,000 to 100,000 people in Babyn Yar, though the exact number has not been investigated. This site stands not only as a landmark of the Holocaust's grim history, but also as its poignant symbol in Eastern Europe. Since 2016, the Babyn Yar Holocaust Memorial Center has dedicated itself to preserving the memory of those lost. We believe their stories are worth sharing and will remain actual for many decades. Our goal is to commemorate real people by revealing their stories. And to do so, we are developing an interactive Holocaust museum. Who are we? The team of scientists, artists, architects, researchers, and creatives united to cultivate the memory of the Holocaust in Eastern Europe. Supervised by a board of human rights activists, artists, entrepreneurs, religious and political leaders from all over the world, because mute monuments won't make a difference. Commemoration requires interaction. To tell a new story, we need to take a look from different perspectives. Our project engages the new generation to synthesize information differently through visual narratives, 3D maps, collaborative networks, educational projects, an interactive library, and audiovisual exhibitions and memorial objects. Those and many other projects will form the foundation of the future Babyn Yar Memorial Museum. We're enhancing the experience of Babyn Yar visitors with powerful artistic installations like the Mirror Field, a place for reflection symbolic synagogue, looking into the past and others. But now, under massive missile attacks on civilian objects and historical and cultural sites, we have postponed the construction of a memorial center in Babyn Yar and focused on efforts related to preserving memory and protecting human and civil rights. Babyn Yar Foundation launched the Closed Eyes Digital Memorial to keep in Ukrainian collective memory the stories of those who were killed during the war. Together with Yahad and Unum and Father Patrick Desbois, we are collecting evidence of Russian crimes against the civilian population Babyn Yar Holocaust Memorial Center and the State Archival Service of Ukraine initiated a massive digitization of the previously unexamined archive data, forming the picture of Jewish life in Ukraine. The Memorial Center has created one of the most overarching online repositories, with over 3.6 million documents from 13 archives. All of them are available for free to everyone at babynyar.org. The documentary Heritage of Babyn Yar was included in the Memory of the World International Register by the UNESCO International Advisory Committee. This work holds particular significance amid the ongoing war, where archives face deadly peril. Babyn Yar Holocaust Memorial Center continues its academic research efforts. We support interdisciplinary journal East European Holocaust Studies, an outlet for researchers dealing with the history of the Holocaust and the Second World War in Central and Eastern Europe. Together, we can transform Babyn Yar from a symbol of oblivion into a place of memory. And this is the main goal behind the Babyn Yar Holocaust Memorial Center.
Thank you, Alex. I'm also pleased to say that I sit on the advisory board of the journal Eastern European Holocaust Studies. We have additional information about the journal on a table outside in the lobby. This opening panel is about memory. There's a funny thing about memory. It never stays where you think you left it. It finds its way like water through a rock, wherever it is. Sometimes memory is distorted. It's ripped out of the pages of history. It becomes part of the dark silences of a nation's history. And sometimes memory is weaponized. Babyn Yar has been a place of memory that has experienced all phases of those types of distortions and twists of memory. So we're very excited for this panel to address some of the issues of Babyn Yar, what it means for Ukraine, and what it means more generally for issues of memory today. I'm very pleased to introduce my colleague, Dr. Avi Pat, who will be the moderator for this panel. Avi is the Doris and Simon Conover Chair of Judaic Studies and Director of the Center for Judaic Studies and Contemporary Jewish Life here at the University of Connecticut. As you can see from your program, he's a widely published scholar with specialties on Holocaust education and research as well. So I'm very glad to turn it over to Avi for his introduction of the panel. Please join me in welcoming him to the podium.
Thank you so much, Jim, and thank you so much to all of you for being here this morning for this summit and for this morning's panel. It's truly an honor for me to be able to be here, both to have been able to hear that powerful and inspiring keynote address which launched our summit this morning, and to be able to moderate this morning's panel on the legacies of Babyn Yar, preserving memory and identity in Ukraine. As Professor Waller suggested, collective memory, the way in which we use the past to in the service of the present and in the service of how we hope to build the future, is constantly evolving, constantly a negotiation between the needs of the present and the way in which we interpret the historical past. And so I'm really looking forward to this discussion with our panelists this morning on the role that the Babyn Yar Holocaust Memorial Center will serve both in the present and in the future. The Babyn Yar Holocaust Memorial Center will serve, as we've seen in the video, as a physical space and place of memory, a museum, an educational archive, and a center of scientific knowledge about the site's historic atrocities from September of 1941 and thereafter. In addition to respectfully commemorating the victims of those atrocities, the center will shape the public discussion of the tragedy and its role in Ukrainian national memory. And so the members of this panel this morning are going to explore the work of the center and the struggle for memory, particularly in light of Russia's ongoing efforts to culturally and physically erase such memory. So in a moment, I will introduce our panelists, all three of our panelists, and then we'll have about 10 minutes each to talk about the role that the center will play in preserving that memory in light of the current context. And then if we have time, we'll have a second round of discussion, and then we'll open up for Q&A with the audience. You can all ask questions of our panelists. So it's an honor for me to introduce our three distinguished panelists who are here with us this morning. First, Oleksiy Makukhin. Oleksiy is the CEO of the Babyn Yar Holocaust Memorial Center. He's educated at the Taras Shevchenko National University of Kyiv, where he has degrees in public relations, advertising, and applied communications. He's a native of Kyiv and has been with the Memorial Center since 2020, arriving from a background in filmmaking and strategic communications, including a stint with Ukraine's Ministry of Defense as an advisor on public affairs. He has worked as a producer for the Sota Cinema Group, a Ukrainian entertainment company, and provides a full range of a company which provides a full range of feature film production services. He also served as executive producer on the 2021 film Babyn Yar Context. So welcome to Oleksiy Makukhin. Dr. Andrea Peto is a historian and a professor at the Department of Gender Studies at Central European University in Vienna, a research affiliate of the CEU Democracy Institute in Budapest, and a Doctor of Science of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences. Her works on gender, politics, Holocaust, and war have been translated into 23 languages. She was awarded the 2018 All-European Academy's Madame de Stael Prize for Cultural Values and the 2022 University of Oslo Human Rights Award. She is Doctor Honoris Causa of Södertörn University in Stockholm, Sweden. Her recent monograph include Forgotten Massacre, Budapest 1944, and she's also the author of The Women of the Arrow Cross Party, Invisible Hungarian Perpetrators in the Second World War. Welcome to Dr. Andrea Peto. Our third panelist this morning is Ms. Anna Vyshniakova. Anna Vyshniakova is an expert analyst and consultant in the fields of international criminal and international humanitarian law. She assists law enforcement agencies to establish accountability for the extensive array of war crimes that have taken place in Ukraine since 2014. Throughout her career, Vyshniakova has provided her expertise as a consultant for Ukrainian and international organizations such as Project Expedite Justice, Commission for International Justice and Accountability, Witness, the Ukrainian Legal Advisory Group, the Clooney Foundation for Justice, and the Crimean Human Rights Group. In March 2023, she founded the NGO LingvaLexa with a specific focus on combating atrocity speech crimes. Welcome, Ms. Anna Vyshniakova. So we'll start our discussion, and I'll give time for each of our panelists to answer this first question, and then if we have time, we'll proceed to a next question. So first, to Oleksiy, what do you see as the role of the Babyn Yar Holocaust Memorial Center in preserving memory and identity in Ukraine, particularly considering Russia's ongoing efforts to erase such memory culturally and physically? Why does the past matter for the present?
Hello. Thank you for having me here, and I would like to start from gratitude to the university and in general to American people for support. As it was mentioned earlier today, it is very important for us in Ukraine. We feel it, and without your support, it won't be possible for us to resist. So thank you on behalf of all Ukrainian people. So as it was mentioned, I arrived to the memorial from background in filmmaking and strategic communication, with experience in Ministry of Defense on public affairs and disinformation. So you will find nothing about museums in my CV. Fortunately, the center never meant to be a museum or commemorative project in traditional sense. As with any other major Holocaust museum, archival work, collecting of artifacts, historical research are central to our mandate. But when we come to physical realization of the project, we used a more unconventional approach. Why? For I think 2 reasons. The first one is that we believe that to be appealing for next generations, and when we're building a big museum, it's always for decades to come. Yes, so we need to use innovative tools to be appealing to these next generations. Second is that the Babyn Yar itself is a very specific place in Kiev. I'm not sure how many of you are aware about it, so I make just a very brief introduction about it. It is considered to be probably one of the most dark places in Kiev for ages, and not only because of the massacre which happened during the Nazi occupation of Kiev, but even before. So it was the places of 5 cemeteries. If we read history books, we can read that this was the place where not all, but lots of brutal battles happened centuries before. Then there was this Babyn Yar tragedy when almost all entire Jewish population of Kiev was killed just in 2 days, which became notoriously known as the biggest mass shooting scene probably in history in such short period of time. Then there was a crime of oblivion when Soviet Union completely tried to erase any notion of Babyn Yar. Then there was also a technogenic tragedy in that place when there was destruction of brick production and flood of pulp. Pulp is part of brick production. It went down and killed nobody knows how many, probably 500 people. It was all covered by the Soviet. So it's a big territory. It's not just one piece of land. It's a big territory where lots of tragedy happened. And for many years it was not even known, not only the exact number of victims, but even the place where it happened, because the mechanic, if I can say so, of the tragedy was so that Nazi killed Jews in 2 days. Then they exposed the ravine so that they would be covered with sand of the ravine. And then there was occupation of Kiev during 2 years. Nazi occupation from 41 till 43. During these 2 years, lots of people, not only Jewish people, there were not so many left, were killed in Babyn Yar. So in total, the number is about 100,000 people. So anyone, if for example, something was stolen from a shop or some accident happened, so the Nazi would kill like each 10 person and they would be killed there in Babyn Yar. Then when Nazi retreated, they decided to cover this crime, and so they forced the prisoners, Ukrainian prisoners of the camp, which was near Babyn Yar, to excavate the remainings of the bodies in 2 years and to burn them. So that is why there is no exact accurate place where remainings of bodies could be found. And Soviet Union didn't care about it at all. So this land was treated as a wasteland, as a site of a big construction plot. So we, it was our foundation who identified the place where this killing happened, and it was done only how long? Like 3 years ago. We hired a young team of architects who also never dealt with Holocaust studies before, but they were good in so-called forensic architecture, when you're using all available media data, like photos, videos, even pictures, evidences, to identify something which is still there at the ground. Because you cannot see the ravine in Babyn Yar, by the way. When you come now to the place, you don't see the ravine. It is flat. And we identified where the killings happened. So coming closer to how the war influenced what we are doing now. Of course, when the full-scale invasion started in February, first days or weeks, it was all like one long day. We were not thinking much about memorialization. We were helping to evacuate people from eastern part of Ukraine to what was believed to be more safe western part of Ukraine. Then in some weeks when we were still counting weeks at that time, we think that probably this war could end in weeks. Then we realized that it's about months, and now we see that it's about years. So we made a decision to cut our funds by 80% and redirect the money which we had at that time for humanitarian needs of our military with non-lethal help and equipment. But also we started to think how we can use the expertise which we gained in different spheres in the situation we have now. So we launched several projects which I will now briefly describe. So the team which I mentioned, which were doing forensic architecture, and they're really good in it, they are now doing same forensic architecture of the biggest Russian war crimes, like for example Russian attack on Mariupol dramatic theater. So they are with this instrument of architecture restoring how the crime happened second by second, where the missile arrived, where were all the people, how it impacted them, which becomes important evidence for further investigation. Our head of our academic council, world famous research in Holocaust Catholic priest Father Patrick Dubois, who actually coined the term Holocaust by bullets, is now using similar instruments and approach to documenting war crimes in Ukraine. His team just now, they arrived yesterday, and we're doing it together. So they are now documenting war crimes to then give these materials to prosecution in Germany and France. We focused also on digitizing archives, not that we were not doing it before the war, but now it became a much bigger effort. So we have digitized already 3.5 million documents in different cities of Ukraine, because this archive can be destroyed by a Russian attack any time, any day. And we aim to digitize all these documents, which is 16 million copies for the next 2 years. Also, because we have experience in restoring names of victims of Babyn Yar, so now we know around 29,000 names of victims from 34,000. And now the same team is doing it for memorializing names of civil victims of the ongoing war. So we made a martyrology. It is called Closed Eyes, where our researchers from open sources, they found biographies, verified them, and put it online, stories of ordinary people. So to sum up this part, in Babyn Yar we believe in giving voice to various artists and experts. So we never wanted to make just one museum, but because of such nature of this tragedy, that there were many tragedies and it's a huge territory and many nationalities, of giving voices to different artists and experts. And also we believe in providing as much context as possible for this matter and let then people think, read and debate. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Oleksiy. Yeah. So, Andrea, what do you see as the role of the Babyn Yar Holocaust Memorial Center, in particular in light of the current war and attempts to erase memory culturally and physically?
Thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you for the DOT Prize for the Babyn Yar Center. This really gives fantastic visibility for the work what colleagues are doing in Ukraine. And I'm coming to this panel from Vienna. I'm a professor at the Central European University, this private university which was forced to exile from one European Union country to another one, from Hungary to Austria. And I just wanted to thank you. Probably you have signed petitions and support letters at a certain point, and we have to acknowledge that we lost. We were betrayed, and now we are in Austria. And of course, you can say that how on earth the Babyn Yar Center commissioned this task of running the academic journal to a person who is representing an institution which is a loser, because also the gender studies was deleted from the accredited study list in Hungary, and also I had to resign from the Hungarian accreditation committee. And the answer is related to the work I think I've been doing in the past years, which is looking at the dark history and the dark legacies and how it actually influences the Holocaust remembrance. And I'm actually arguing in my work that there is a paradigm change which is happening in the Holocaust remembrance. So this is not denial, this is not distortion, but this is a paradigm change. But we will have this question after the round, so I will be happy to elaborate on this, but it's pretty obvious that the tools, the methods, the language we have used in the previous decades actually did not bring the results we hoped to have. And the question is, if we continue what we are doing, but louder, will this actually bring us some results? And I was really happy when I was approached with this task, because I'm teaching in this institution which is called the Hartford for the Poor, because we are offering first-class education for students from different parts of the world with limited financial means. And that actually probably qualified me to recognize a gap in the Holocaust academic research, and also to recruit fantastic scholars like James Waller on the academic council and fantastic editorial board, who all united in certain principles. And I would like to list those principles. One is that if you look at the Holocaust research, there it's very much Americanized. Please don't misunderstand me. This is a language. This is a language, the Anglo-Saxon language, and also the terminology and the vocabulary, which is not necessarily spoken by those who are living in other parts of the world. And here we have a discrepancy of language, experience, and also access to different resources. The Babyn Yar Holocaust Memorial Center made it possible for us that this is an open access journal. which means that you just click on the East European Holocaust Studies, and then all the articles are there for you. And if you know academic publishing, this is very much reflecting on the inequalities. Who has got the money to pay for open access? So in a sense, we are privileged. On the other hand, we want to use this privilege for a good cause. And the good cause is to make research available about a region and about a context where this was basically not previously accessible. And we are also encouraging scholars from Ukraine to submit articles to us, and also with the help of the Babyn Yar Center, we can translate those Ukrainian submissions to English. Because of course it's easy. We are open for Ukrainian scholars to submit their works, but do not forget not only the very difficult context they are coming from, namely there is a war over there, but also the language issues, and also because of academic publishing has certain rules. And I'm sure that in this room there are lots of people who know that this is not easy to publish in this word. And what we agreed on with the advisory board and the academic board, that we are with the editorial board and the advisory board, that we are trying to facilitate that this knowledge which had been produced in Ukraine, and otherwise it's not visible because there are not many people who speak Ukrainian and who actually get access to that research, would be available for a larger audience. So accessibility and facilitating knowledge, and also to address controversial topics in a controversial way. So if you go for the first issue, which is available online, you see that there is an open forum about the never again. Because it's obvious that the never again, this kind of slogan, which we thought is unquestionably the basis of our existence, had been questioned. So we asked very reputable and important senior scholars to reflect on this, that what does never again mean? And if you are reading this dossier, you see that never again means always different things in different contexts. And that is the main challenge, and that's what my academic work is about, how the illiberal forces are actually questioning and instrumentalizing previously unquestioned concepts, ideas, and slogans like the never again. So, and then we also have a dossier which is focusing on certain topics, and the first issue is focusing on the reflections of the Holocaust in Ukrainian literature. The next issue will be focusing on Kuznetsov, who first wrote about the Babyn Yar tragedy. So, in a sense, what this journal tries to do is invite new authors, disseminate and translate that knowledge into an academic language which we all speak, in a way that this is a communication of equals, which is really difficult, taking into consideration the different inequalities in knowledge production in the global context, and also to offer a very innovative structure for a journal. So we have got interviews, we have got open forum, we have got reviews of books published in Ukraine in Ukrainian, which are otherwise not really visible, right? And then you can actually knock on the door of the librarian saying, I want that book. So, and that would actually, help the scholars who are working on those books among horrifically difficult circumstances to get to an audience. So, how this actually had been, because this sounds like a solid academic journal, but how this actually changed because of the war is that our work became even more important. It became even more important, and also that this war, as you know, started with the so-called denazification. of Ukraine. So it means that the history of the Second World War and the Shoah had been twisted, instrumentalized for the purpose of the war. And illiberal regimes are using history and memory as a tool for mnemonic security and as a geopolitical factor. So this is a good news for doctoral students and students in the room, that if you think that history is not important, the liberal regimes are making history very important, and your work is more important than ever. Because this kind of, I would say cynically cheap, soft power method is extremely powerful, and it needs lots of courage, collaboration, and support to counteract this. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea, and especially I hope we have time to come back to your point about the paradigm shift in Holocaust memory, and also political manipulation and distortion of that memory, which, as you've suggested, leaves much research to be done in the future. Anna, I'm pleased that you're here as an international expert in international criminal and humanitarian law, because I'm especially interested to hear your perspective on what the role of the Babyn Yar Holocaust Memorial Center might be now in this moment in preserving memory and identity in Ukraine, and perhaps in the future as well.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, dear audience. So basically, I was just thinking about which hat to wear here, like as a Jewish person from Ukraine, for whom memorialization plays a very important role, as my ancestors are buried in Babyn Yar, or as a Ukrainian citizen whose country is suffering from the war every day and whose friends are killed, or as a lawyer who is very boring and very narrowed with this legal framework. But I just decided probably that I would be a human here who was residing for the last 6 months in the Kharkiv Oblast and working in the Kharkiv Oblast, that is basically the front line, absolutely next to the front line. So maybe just to share with you some feelings and some, let's call it emotions, that you are feeling while you're living there. Yesterday at the award ceremony, I heard when the violin was playing. And I was thinking, wow, how a talented person has to be to put the suffering, the emotions from atrocities into the music. You know, to be very honest, the sound of the war, it's far from music. It's first of all explosions, and secondly, cursing words. Lots of cursing words. Cursing words where we were hearing these massive explosions. Cursing words when police and prosecutors were coming to the atrocity places. Then I started to reflect that the taste of the war, it's not sandwiches and champagne on the conferences. It's the taste of the salt, of the tears of the mothers who are coming to the police offices and saying, I buried my child next to my house. Can I have a paper to show further, to have some compensation? Talking about the smell of the war, it stinks. It stinks. Because when you are coming to the places, for example, mass graves, or some basements where there are corpses, the first thing that you feel is the smell. And I came to a conclusion yesterday that the war is something that it's impossible to digest. I mean, even we who are living in the war zone and who are living in Ukraine, until now, we cannot fully understand what is going on. It's some kind of surrealism. It's impossible to digest it, especially when you are at the very moment of the war. And I was thinking that one has to have a really good talent to put this indigestible material of the war into the culture. And I would just say a huge thanks for the Memorial Center that you are doing, like in the context of the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. And secondly, to say that your work can become a very good lesson for the further building of memorialization policy in Ukraine. Because definitely we will be facing lots of challenges, starting from mothers of the soldiers who are coming to the administrations, to regional administrations, and asking, please put the name of my child like at the name of the street. Or, of course, the issues that are coming to the very new crime of collaboration in Ukraine, because when you are come into the deoccupied territories of Ukraine, and you are seeing the influence of the destruction of the culture. It's absolutely massive how brainwashed are some people and what they are saying. It's, you know, kind of a very, very big flip. Talking about, probably here I will tell a little bit about the destruction of Ukrainian culture. When I'm asked about genocides questions, I always try to avoid them when it's possible, and then put in the head of a lawyer hating myself, actually. Because genocide has a very narrow concept, and I will re-emphasize it. And talking about cultural genocide, in the modern international law, we do not have cultural genocide. Despite that Raphael Lemkin's initial idea, the father of the word genocide, he was like basically focusing on the culture. So what is going on with people on the occupied and currently deoccupied territories who were supporting Ukrainian culture? By supporting Ukrainian culture, I mean speaking Ukrainian languages, having Ukrainian books in their houses. Russian soldiers were coming to the houses, searching everything. If they were finding Ukrainian books, Ukrainian flags, something that manifests that a person supports Ukraine, they were taking people to the basements. So basements were in the administrative buildings, these were the torture chambers. And they were so-called re-educating people. And as Alexandra, I was also taking like numerous interviews with the people who went through the tortures. And you know what struck me the mostly? That there were some people who would better die than betray Ukraine. And this is such a feeling moment, how they're talking about Ukrainian culture, how they're talking about the Ukrainian identity. And definitely there were some people who were just, you know, today they were Ukrainians and tomorrow they were just greeting Russians with the Russian flag. And that is a very, very difficult issue, and that would be a very difficult issue for the memorialization. Third thing is definitely when we're talking about more than 100,000 war crimes, this is something that absolutely impossible to understand. As it was said previously, that war turns people into the numbers. That cannot be so. So Ukraine would be facing definitely lots of challenges in memorialization, and I get that Babyn Yar Memorial can be very, very helpful with it and can introduce a very good practice in how to do it in a correct way. And I would probably have some 2 minutes to share it from my personal perspective. As a Jewish person from Ukraine, I cannot say that I ever had a strong identity, strong Jewish identity, unless I visited concentration camps in Poland. There is a very beautiful mental thought experiment about Mary's chamber. Anyone heard about it? No? So it's the experiment about a girl who was a scientist. Her name was Mary. So she was living in a black and white room for all her life, never seen a color. But she knew everything about the colors, you know, those physical lengths of the waves and so on and so forth. So cognitively, she knew everything. And one day, she left the room and she saw yellow sun, blue sky, green grass. And the question was, did she know something new? That this feeling of seeing something, of feeling something, is something new. So basically, after visiting the concentration camps in Poland, I started to feel myself as Jewish. And I would be very grateful, it would be very much appreciated if in Ukraine we'll also have the place where people would be able to come and to feel their identity. And the last concluding remark is that atrocity crimes that include war crimes, crime of aggression, genocide, and crimes against humanity. These are crimes not against one nation or one state. These are crimes against all humanity. And this is a responsibility, this is a duty of every country, of every democratic country, to raise the citizens who would be having that values, not to turn into the beasts when the law, let's say, pressure is going away. Because when we are going through the turbulent times, the only thing that is living is just humanity, not the punishment. So that's why I think that the work that you are doing is absolutely valuable, and thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anna, and thank you for wearing the multiple different hats, both here in the present and also in your answer as well. So we have a couple of minutes for a second round, and then we'll open up for questions from the audience. And Andrea, I might start with you and pick up on the point that you raised about a paradigm change in Holocaust memory, and especially in light of what you alluded to, which is both the use of references, Holocaust analogies in the outbreak of the war, sort of denazification, and thinking about Father Patrick Desbois and using Holocaust documentation efforts now to document crimes, the legal analogies that we just heard about, the sort of thinking about the physical space and the meaning of that physical space. And I'm wondering if each of you can comment on the museum itself is designed to preserve this physical space, to create a memorial in a sense that will shape public discussion of the place and its role in Ukrainian national memory. But I'm also wondering if you can tell us how you think this war will change or has already changed the way in which the Holocaust is remembered in the Ukraine. And Andrea, we'll start with you. Yeah.
Thank you. So we have to go back to the beginning, namely how the Holocaust memorialization had started, and this one, which was very much a top-down event, not that much a bottom-up. And if we see in the past 10, 15 years how the different institutions like the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance or the European Holocaust Remembrance Infrastructure is trying to coordinate and to somehow create a framework for the Holocaust remembrance in Europe and also globally. But there are some problems with this narrative itself, that it's not very much resilient towards the populist challenge. And of course, political scientists are ready to die for a distinction between populism, illiberalism, authoritarianism, democratization. But just to make this list of terms even more complicated, I would like to introduce this term of the new illiberal state. Because we heard in the yesterday the concept of taking over certain, that was Professor Waller's introduction, what happens when certain democratic procedures are actually taken, instrumentalized by non-democratic forces, and then they step by step delete and take over certain democratic procedures. So, and how is this connected to the memory politics? And let me go back to the claim I made in the first round, that illiberal states consider history and memory very important, sometimes more important than we calling the progressive forces. They consider education very important. They are setting up illiberal institutions. They are taking over the higher education from Sweden to Hungary nowadays. And they consider academic authorization important, unlike some of us who are saying, I'm not doing my habilitation, I'm not doing my PhD. They care about this. So how can you actually pull this together? That the populist challenge, which is actually attacking these kind of institutions, is creating a new state. And with Weronika Grzebalska, we are arguing that this is called the illiberal polypore state. So before you start Googling, this is not an ugly skin problem, but this is this mushroom which lives on the trunk of the tree and uses the energy from the tree in order to survive and produces nothing else than the polypore itself. And this kind of state, which is, this term is coming from Georg Mossi's description of fascism, how fascism is using the previous systems in order to keep it itself alive. This kind of polyporization of the Holocaust memory is one of the biggest dangers. I'm not sure that this term polypolarization exists in English, but it is, if it's not, it should. And I'm explaining you why this is actually helpful to understand the challenges which are ahead of Holocaust education and Holocaust research nowadays. So there is a major paradigm change here, that previously the Holocaust deniers and Holocaust revisionists were marginal, kind of strange people who are just questioning that there were not enough chimneys to burn so many people. So, I mean, that's the David Irving type of people. But now the difference is that states are actually intervening into the process of Holocaust memorialization, and they are not denying, they are not revising, they are not distorting. I'm using the word distortion because the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance uses this term distortion. But they are emptying those concepts. They are polypolarizing this concept. How they are doing this? They are setting up parallel institutions, museums, research institutions. From Poland to Hungary to Russia, you see that this the number of research institutions working on the history of the Second War are mushrooming, to stick to this very biologizing metaphor. I'm aware of this biologizing metaphor. They appoint experts. They don't train experts. They appoint experts. And also, they are extremely anti-intellectual in a sense that they want to show the people and to give voice to the people, arguing that the kind of conspiracy of previous research did not make this research available. And also creating, they are using the same terminology, but it's an empty one. And it's really difficult to track this because this kind of polypolarized language is hiding the malicious content and also the intention to use the memory of the Holocaust and the Shoah in order to create this illiberal international of those different countries and NGOs and transnational organizations, which have got one very simple aim: to create, recreate, and rename what is normal and what is acceptable. So, of course, if you are working on far right and extreme right politics, as myself in the past 30 years, you are attempted to be paranoiac and believe in conspiracies. But sometimes it doesn't mean that there are no conspiracies and there are no transfer of certain concepts and ideas. So, if you look at how the war actually made this extremely clear. Because the colleagues were saying, how come that Putin is giving this speech about the denazification? What is this? We are totally surprised. What is happening? And then as a mother, as a partner, and as a friend, I learned to say, not to say, I told you so. Because there is this huge literature out there which is actually explaining how illiberal memory politics work, how this instrumentalization, how this emptying of the different concepts actually cause an enormous harm, especially because there is still this paradigm that the more we talk about the Holocaust, the better it is. No. We have to make women visible because women were left out from the Holocaust research. No. Because illiberal memory politics is actually using the her story turn, which is presenting women as symbols of suffering and nationhood and whatever, so without any kind of critical reflection on this process. And if you go to the bookshop in Poland and in Hungary, there are tons of new books, new research about women in the Holocaust, but in a framework which is going back to the 1960s. So, summing it up, I would like to argue that we should be extremely careful using the previous concepts, narratives, and believe in our previous orthodoxies. Because what this war actually made is that there is suddenly a big flash in the darkness, and it's very clear what is happening. And of course, this kind of realization, what is happening, that requires lots of self-reflection and lots of painful examination of what we did wrong. But I think that's the first step in order to really think about successful strategies if we understand what were the mistakes we did. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrea. So, Oleksiy, you explained to us in your opening remarks on a very practical level how the war affected the work of the center, and both financially, and we could see in the video, stopping construction. But tell us a little bit about how you think, what are the challenges that the war presents in terms of the role of the museum, the role of the center in shaping and using the place of Babyn Yar to shape a discussion of Ukrainian national memory. How is the war going to affect Holocaust memory going to the future, and how does that change the mission of the Babyn Yar Holocaust Memorial Center?
It certainly affects, although probably I don't have all answers now. The first thing, which is obvious, that the slogan "Never Again" didn't work. We used it also in our in everything we designed, and I think I could say that probably like such main idea was to show the tragedy as maybe brutally as possible, to make sure that it never happen again. I'm not sure that it is still relevant, but I'm sure that our approach, and I mean not just our foundation, but Ukrainian society in total, our approach to memorializing will change. We're now in the middle of the war, so I cannot say how it will change, but I think it will change somehow. Maybe we as Ukrainians would lean for more quiet approach to memorialization. I cannot say now, and it's an open debate. I don't think any one person can decide. Secondly, it's a popular debate already now, to bring together stories of Holocaust and the current genocide, but we still cannot legally call it genocide, right? Current war crimes. So our position as an institution, as a museum, is that though it's kind of top of mind idea to bring them together, and of course we can compare them, but we stand for accurate research separately of each of them, because it would make poor analysis for both sides. So we as an institution believe in importance of accurately researching how it happened, what led to this tragedy. And so I'm really sure, and also I have experience encountering Russian disinformation for some years. I really sure it's also same as with Holocaust. It's important to make lots of studies now on Russia, how it happened that from 90s they came to this state which they have now, about their propaganda, what happened with all their human rights, and so on and so forth. So accurate research is needed for both cases, and we don't think it's a good idea just to group them together.
Thank you. So, Anna, I'm curious to hear your perspective. You spoke before about sort of both individually on a national level as Ukrainian, professionally, how Holocaust awareness shapes and has shaped your identity. How do you think the war now is going to affect the way in which both the project of the Babyn Yar Holocaust Memorial Center and Ukrainian national, sort of this collective memory, this collective identity, what are the challenges that might be presented in terms of the work of the Memorial Center in integrating the memory of the Holocaust into national memory?
Well, as Oleksiy told, that is a very debatable question. I think that for the current moment, it's not very correct even to start this debate. There has to be some time, because as I was previously saying, basically I was facing one interesting challenge. Just sitting, again, like under the bombardment, when you are waking up, hearing the explosions, this is a very particular type of pleasure when you cannot understand like what's going on, and this is the most horrible alarm that you are hearing. I was having a call with my friend, and we had quite an interesting discussion when I was sitting in the bathroom about who is perceiving the reality in a more correct way. From when you're outside and when you are like seeing the atrocities in Ukraine, and when you can be calm and rationally analyze what's going on. Like speaking, it was talked yesterday like about the role of the dialogue, for example. Trust me, when you're inside of the zone of hostilities, you're not thinking about the dialogue. This is the last thing that you will be thinking. Or the person who is just like in the middle of what's going on, who is seeing and feeling every small moment, who is like inside of lots of different processes and so on and so forth. So which perceiving of the reality is more correct? For the current moment, I don't have the answer for this question. I think that some time has to pass for us to understand how to correctly build these narratives. And also I agree with Oleksiy that it's quite difficult to compare the ongoing atrocities in Ukraine and Holocaust. Definitely they are having like lots of same interconnections, but I also should say that it's possible to compare Ukraine, like the war in Ukraine, with each and every conflict that is going on in the world. And I mean, like, third of the world is just like in the blood now. There are so many conflicts in the world currently ongoing. And it's not correct just to talk only about, let's say, war in Ukraine. It's correct to talk and to voice about all the conflicts. And as I was saying, like, there are some interconnections, but as far as I'm not a professional in memorial policy, again, a lawyer, so I think that some time has to pass in which ways to compare these tragedies. But definitely talking about the international tribunals, talking about the role of Nuremberg, talking about the policy to show what is black and what is white, here definitely we need to make many, many steps.
Thank you. So we have plenty of time for questions. I believe there are microphones circulating. So if you have a question, raise your hand. And when you ask your question, just introduce yourself briefly and then ask a brief question. And if it's for a specific panelist, address your question to them.
Hi, I am Fiza Sagir, a PhD student in UConn School of Social Work. And I'm glad to be here and listening to you all today. Thank you for your, what all you have spoken about. Thank you, Andrea, for making such remarks, which I really appreciate. Since we have been discussing about the role of Babyn Yar Memorial, I was thinking about what's the point or purpose of a memorial? It is for us, humankind, to be reminded that such horrendous war crimes do not happen ever on the face of earth for any people, any community in the world. What do you think about our collective guilt, responsibility, and failure in letting similar war crimes happen in all other places of the world, like in Palestine right now, in Yemen, in Afghanistan and Iraq, and so many other places I can count, and even Ukraine that we have been discussing since morning. So what is our responsibility, our collective guilt about? Thank you.
Thank you. Andrea, you want to start? Yeah.
Thank you very much for this really important question. And I want to respond to this on two levels. One is a personal level and the other is an academic level. So if you see the exhibition about the Babyn Yar Memorial Center, you see Marina Abramovich Crying Wall Memorial. And if you haven't seen that, please Google and have a look, because this is a memorial which is not only made by a woman, which is really extraordinary in the memorial business, as you know, but also because it represents a new paradigm in the memorialization. So let me briefly tell you why I think this memorial is really interesting and innovative. So those who haven't seen it, this is the crystal wall of crying. So it's a wall which is somehow resembling the wall in Jerusalem, but it's not a clean stone, but it's cold, it's smoky, and it's crying. So there are drops which are coming out from this, and there are some crystals which are in there, and of course these healing crystals. And of course I know that when somebody is mentioning healing crystals, a medical student starts crying, but this is a new paradigm. Right? So when you look at this memorial, you don't see those kinds of very easily identifiable symbols like book, a broken book, or the menorah, or the names, or projections. So that kind of visual narrative which had been developed in the past 30 years to commemorate the Shoah, this is not there. Right? What you have there is an opening for a new way of thinking about personal responsibility and meditation, and thinking about how the individual, him, her, they self, can commemorate, heal, and it's a bodily sensory experience. So when Anna was mentioning about the feeling, if there is only way to counteract the populist attack and the populist instrumentalization, is exactly this way, namely to hijack and also use this kind of memory politics with a new content, with individualized kind of effect and emotions. So I humbly suggest you to look at this monument, because, of course, there have been lots of discussions about this, because it's, and that's good, because discussion is good. And this opens up a new way of memorialization, of instead of speaking about imagined communities and identities, about yourself. What do you do? What is your responsibility? And that's my response on the individual level. So what other people can do, I don't know. But, and especially I'm very careful in this panel speaking about, I haven't traveled 30 hours from a war zone to get here. I came from this privileged position from Vienna. But every morning I wake up, I always ask this question: what can I do in order to dig the grave for the liberal regime? And in the evening, I'm always asking, have I spent my day meaningfully? And this might be extremely cheap, and it sounds like a coaching thing, but it is helping me to keep my sanity, because, I don't want to compare, but, leaving a country, moving a university with 1,200 students, with 400 faculty in the middle of the academic year, this was not easy. But of course, again, I don't want to compare. But so what I can do is, and what I suggest you to do is, I'm active on social media, I'm doing podcasts, I'm writing open eds. So I'm trying to be out there with ideas which I consider authentic, important, and academically grounded. And who else would do this, counteracting what Oleksiy was mentioning, this disinformation and misappropriation of information, if not those whose job and whose training qualifies them to do that. So that's why, again, I would like to appeal to the students who are here, luckily in numerous numbers, that please use this opportunity, because it rarely happens that history knocks on your door and there is an opportunity for you to tell the better stories, to use Dina Georgi's term, that better story is, of course, not the better, the best, the betterest, like the communism which is developing, but a better story which is okay story. It's an okay story to survive us, to help us to survive. So thank you for the question. I would say that both as a scholar and the memory scholar and the memory studies scholar, it's an extremely interesting time. And also as an individual. I mean, we can, of course, be depressed, sad, tired, and total. But that actually serves the purpose of the liberal regime. And because you are paralyzed to do this. And of course, I know that I'm speaking from a privileged experience, but because I have this privilege, I want to speak up. Thank you.
So I see we have a question here, and then one 2 rows back also.
Thank you for the recognition. I'm a student from Bard College, freshman, and I'm very honored to be here with you today. There was a point mentioned by Andrea Peto. You mentioned a point about privilege. And my question is, how can we, as people having access to all those language resources and other resources, as people who are here right now, utilize our privilege to help? And another question about the portrayal of Holocaust and the responsibility of portrayal of Holocaust. How does it affect and how can it affect the world's perception and approach to war crimes in today's war with the Russian-Ukrainian war? And how does this responsibility overlap with the responsibility of today? And because, as I might assume, it is not just a topic of the past, it also clearly affects how people react to things that happen today right now. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So I want to pick up on this question, and maybe Anna will turn it to you, because I think there's an interesting point about how do those of us from a position of privilege, how can we use our position that we have right now to make a difference, to help, to assist? And it's interesting, if you think about documentation of crimes, there's something very different about the world that we live in, that we can see things happening. And Alexandra was talking earlier about using open source technology to document crimes with available evidence. So I'm just curious, do you think that there are things that students can do, that activists who are here in the West from a position of privilege can play a role in documentation efforts and documenting crimes right now, even from a distance of thousands of miles away?
Thank you very much. That's a very good question. So I absolutely liked your second question also. I would probably say a couple of words about it. But let me probably a little bit reflect about documentation. Here we need to pose us a question. For what do we document? When we're talking about the prosecution of crimes, the first who are coming to the place of the commission of the crime is police, who are making like all the efforts to document the atrocities. Definitely it has lots of gaps. As it was told previously, first of all, police doesn't have the capacity to document everything. And when there was the deoccupation of Kharkiv Oblast, just imagine many villages and towns were deoccupied, so police doesn't have so many personnel to come immediately to all the places. They revealed, for example, the mass grave that was Alexandra was telling previously, 452 or 56, it had like more than 450 corpses. So definitely like all the police went there. And it's very difficult to cover all the places while the deoccupation. So at that moment, definitely the documentation efforts were very, very useful. But basically when we're talking about documentation, we need to understand either it's the collection of the evidence of the crimes that basically police is doing and the investigative authorities. And in this case, it's very let's say, useful to cooperate with police and with the law enforcement agencies who are saying, okay, we're having gaps here, here, and here. Because the quantity of the evidence that were collected is absolutely massive. But the question is, are they admissible in the court? Because I remember when the war started, exactly on the 24th of February, all the NGOs were like, we need to document. So we started to watch all the Telegram channels, Twitters, Facebooks, because at that point everyone was taking the photos of the blast. That was something enormous. Now it's prohibited basically to do that, but at the very start, of course, the internet was just overwhelmed with those pictures. And then I was asked to read a couple of trainings on the admissibility of evidence. And I would say that 90% of the things that were in the web, they were irrelevant for the court. For example, if you're doing some edits in the videos, like putting the logo as it was done like on the Telegram channels, cutting something, it's irrelevant for the court. Definitely, it can be helpful. It can be helpful. But again, this has to be structured, and it doesn't have to be, on the amateur level. But there is difference definitely between collection of evidence for the courts and documentation. I will tell you one example. There is an amazing NGO in Ukraine. It's called Vostok SOS. They are working since 2014 in Ukraine, because the war, and I have to emphasize it didn't start in 2022. It's about the connection of different historical events. It started in 2014. So we were sitting with, she's kind of the head of the documentary office, and we were discussing like different cases. And she told, Anna, imagine, after the occupation, we went to one place, and what we found there was a grandmother and a grandfather sitting like that in the hug, and they died like that because of the cold or because of the starvation. And I mean, like, at that moment, it just struck me the difference between the historical narratives and the personal narratives and the law. Because for law, again, this is irrelevant. It's irrelevant how you are dying, hugging your nearest and dearest person, or just like lying like that. But on the personal level, it's such a striking story. And I believe that what is valuable on the human level is definitely telling about these stories. About being privileged and about being abroad, again, as it was previously said, it's very important to be the voice. Not just repeating numbers, not just repeating, I don't know, like the facts. Everyone knows the facts. It's not something that changes the reality. But what is definitely important is to try to make probably some personal connections in Ukraine. I mean, for all the Ukrainians, this is so, the support, the international support, the personal support, it's amazing. I mean, like when we were reading some stories about, let's say, international friendship with Ukrainians, or when there was some demonstration in support for Ukraine, or when some movie was translated in some university, this is, I mean, like, this is apprises very much our, let's say, self-perception. We are feeling that we are not alone. So this, let's say, support when people are talking about what is going on in Ukraine, not in banal words, but in really what is going on, about the personal stories, this can be absolutely, absolutely valuable. And if I make just a couple of questions about the connection between Holocaust and the war in Ukraine, I think that, unfortunately, somehow, for human beings, it's very difficult to make lessons learned from one conflict to another conflict. It was striking for me when there was war in Syria or in Afghanistan. And then I was hearing how people were talking about that, like just discussing football match, weather, and it's like, oh, what's going on in Afghanistan, by the way? And you're like, but it's not, it's something that cannot be discussed between football and weather. And I think that the world basically became very globalized, very globalized. And it's very important for human beings not just to think about their country, their nation, but when there are some atrocities in another places, just to remember that, I mean, Europe, Africa, Asia, US, it's not far, it's here. Because every war has the consequences for each and every country. And just to remember that all the human beings are suffering the same. Thank you.
Yeah. I think there's a question here, yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm Alex Kuzma with the Ukrainian Catholic University Foundation. I wanted to ask you if you could address the issue of genocide and intent. We talk about the Cambodian genocide, we talk about the Bosnian genocide, and yet, as Oleksiy had mentioned, there's a hesitancy at this point on the part of lawyers. I'm a lawyer too, and I have mixed feelings about that sometimes. I think we sort of bend over backwards in some ways not to use the G word for genocide until it becomes overwhelmingly obvious and blatant. But as Tim Snyder would say, and he was here yesterday, what makes this particular war in Ukraine so remarkable and so horrific is that if you listen to the perpetrators, not just Putin, but his whole panoply of propagandists and mouthpieces, Solovyov, Peskov, Simonian, all of these guys, they blatantly say that their intention is to destroy Ukraine, to destroy the Ukrainian people as a people, even if it means destroying half the population. That's 20 million people, if you look at half of 40 million. And yet, so there's that anxiety about not using the word genocide in a frivolous way, and I understand that. So that's one piece of it. The other one is the issue of intent. So the intent is stated. The other piece, though, is also the unintentional genocide, and that comes up going back to the definition of genocide as presented by Raphael Lemkin, because he, for instance, called the Ukrainian terror famine as a classic case of genocide. But a lot of scholars and academics, even those that are the most sympathetic to Ukraine, often say, well, but Stalin didn't really mean to starve 4 to 10 million people. Today, we're in a new point in terms of intent, because whether Russia intends it or not, by blockading the shipment of grain out of Ukraine to the Middle East, Egypt, Yemen, Ethiopia, Nigeria, we're looking at the potential for multiple collateral genocides in the starvation of tens of millions of people in Africa, because the Ukrainians produce about 400, enough grain and enough foodstuffs to feed over 300 million people in the world. That's being blockaded. So we're looking at a whole secondary monstrous potential for a genocide. So I just wanted to ask if you could address that issue of intent and genocide. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question. And I think this will be an excellent question to hear from all of you, your response to this on the applicability of the term genocide, the notion of intent to destroy in whole or in part, and also the hesitation, right? Why are we so afraid to use this word, and what's the impact of that hesitation as well? So maybe we'll just go across. Oleksiy, I'll start with you and respond, and also I think this will be our last round to say.
You're right, the intent is absolutely clear. They openly stated on TV that they intend to destroy Ukrainian identity, and they kill people for Ukrainian identity. I'm not a lawyer, but it sounds to me very familiar to what we read in books about Holocaust. So people were killed just for being Jewish. I don't know what to add. That's it. Yeah. So it's clear intent, and probably it's a genocide. I think maybe I can add. Yeah. And also to your question, what you can do. I think that the answer is simple, though not easy to do. So we, as a country, cannot stand without support of US and other democratic countries. This support comes because governments decide so, but they decide so because there is support of population, majority of population in democratic countries. So that's mean that that you can spread also this message and make what you can to make sure that the idea of supporting Ukraine is spreading. So as long as there is majority in your country and other countries, you have our back. Yes, we have your support, which is very important. And because we are living in a world where we fight for attention, so the attention span is very limited. People don't spend more than, 3 clicks on any topic, usually 2 clicks or 10 seconds. It really, it's never enough to tell and repeat stories about what is happening, to draw attention to our war. This is also partly why we're using these you can say innovative approaches in our center, because people are not a lot of people are interested in Holocaust, especially young people. If they're not related to this topic, if they're not from a family which make them aware of it, they're not really interested, and it's okay, it's like fine. But they are coming, for example, to Babyn Yar because they read that there is this famous New York Serbian Marina Abramovic who built something there. Let's have a look what it is. And then they learn something about Holocaust. Oh, they come because, oh, there is a moving synagogue which opens and closes. Interesting. And then when they are there, we have their attention for 5 minutes, and so we are trying to tell them something, something about the Holocaust. Yeah, so like to sum up, please, like each of you is a medium who can tell something about war in Ukraine and Holocaust to other people who may not be so aware about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Oleksiy.
Anna wants to itching to say something, so go ahead.
Oh, okay. Either way, Anna, you want to respond to this question about genocide and both the applicability and also the hesitation and the impact of that? Yeah.
So I would be more than happy. So basically, definitely no one is saying either genocide, I mean like in the legal field, or it's not genocide. Genocide has to be proved. To prove genocide, this is the most difficult crime for proving. There are two issues like that I wanted to say. When we're talking about international criminal responsibility, it's very important to say that we're talking not about Russia. We're talking about mostly individual criminal responsibility. Basically, it depends on the court. If we're talking about the UN court, then we can talk about Russia. Then there has to be a submission for the genocide, that Russia is committing genocide in Ukraine. You know that ICJ, International Court for Justice, there are now proceedings on genocide convention, that Russia misused the word genocide to justify their atrocities. That is a very creative and very good way to address this question. So it's not that Russia is committing genocide, it's that Russia misused the word genocide for justification of the war. When we're talking about International Criminal Court or national courts, we're talking about particular perpetrators. So it's, for example, Ivan the soldier who came to Ukraine, Putin the president, or Maria Simonyan, who is propagandist. We cannot say that when Maria Simonyan was saying something on TV, it's somehow related to Ivan who went and killed Ukrainians. We need to prove his own intent, that he was killing Ukrainians. The third thing is there are 4 different international crimes, and there are crimes against humanity also. Killing people for their identity is crimes against humanity. Genocide is the question of physical destruction, so basically to kill the person because of his identity and for the purpose to kill all the groups. So it's kind of a double intent. Because when we're talking about pure discrimination, so for example, that someone was targeted because he is Jewish or Ukrainian, and when there is that state policy, it's crimes against humanity. Because besides Lemkin, there was also Lauterpacht who was developing this narrative. Definitely, both of these crimes are very difficult in some cases to be disattached, and they are going all in all together. These are all atrocities. So why I'm so strict about talking about genocide and also about Cambodia? I went to ECCC, the court in Cambodia, particularly last year, to study this question about the difference between crimes against humanity and genocide. And if you're interested, there was an appeals hearing previous September on Khieu Samphan. They didn't fight genocide, they found crimes against humanity. And that was absolutely striking for me, because I was always yeah, there was genocide against Khmer, but basically in a legal perspective, there was genocide only against other Cambodian community, Cham. But all in all, I think that jurisprudence and law doesn't have the monopoly for the word genocide. And as far as genocide, talking about genocide, it's very important to talk not only about punishment, but finally about prevention. So I highly encourage all the international organizations to start talking about incitement to genocide, because incitement to genocide is a separate crime that somehow is very much overlooked. Everyone is talking about violent crimes and etc., but basically I found my own organization to start talking about this incitement to genocide, because basically, when Ivan the soldier is coming to Ukraine and killing Ukrainians, it's irrelevant. Genocide is, war crime is, he's just killing people. But what propagandists are doing, they are pushing Russians to kill Ukrainians. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrea, concluding thoughts both on genocide and...
Yeah, that's two big shoes to wear. So thanks a lot for this fantastic question. And I just want to underline that this debate about how useful at all the concept of genocide has been happening among academics. So if you read Dirk Moses, very questionable and interesting intervention into the whole concept of genocide, or if you, and that also leads to the question of how the different concepts we are having, we are using, are useful at all, and are they serving our needs at all? And that's why I really want to use the opportunity to praise the Babyn Yar Center, because it created a space for critical thinking and moving into terrains which are previously considered to be extremely dangerous and questionable to go there. So also if you look at the fight of fighting against anti-Semitism, you see that how the different definitions around of what anti-Semitism is actually opens up a very interesting debate nowadays about how to fight against anti-Semitism. And I hope that this discussion about how useful or what actually this whole genocide convention can do for preventing genocide in the future will open up opportunities for meaningful discussions, and then we can stop sleepwalking and believing that we know what we think we know and open up new opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you so much to our three panelists for really an excellent, fascinating, and thought-provoking discussion. It's been an honor to share the stage with you, and now I'll turn the microphone back over to my colleague, Professor Jim Waller.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Dr. Pat. We appreciate very much moderation. We are now fortunate to have a lunch break in the courtyard of the Dodd Center for Human Rights. You're very welcome to lunch. Our next session in here starts at 1:30, and the final questions raised here and comments are a perfect leadway into that session, because we're going to talk about issues of accountability for atrocities in Ukraine, what crimes are being committed, and how do we go about holding the perpetrators of those crimes responsible. So please enjoy lunch. We will see you back here at 1:30. Thank you.